Dr. Boutros, would you be okay to kind of circle back and give us a general overview of what you were thinking on this idea of how do we introduce these topics in schools, knowing that some people will be coming in with their own ideas about voodoo, let's say?
I was sort of saying that for middle school students and above, I approach it in two ways. One is I talk about Haiti and Haiti's place in the transnational world. We talk about the Haitian Revolution and something like social sciences, for example, and ask questions, wonder why we learn about the French Revolution, which is happening around the same time, why we learn about the American Revolution, but we don't learn about the Haitian Revolution. We talk a little bit about the ideas of enlightenment, and how really the French Revolution's battle cry for fraternity, equality, is really only realized in Haiti. And so that's one way in. And then I introduced the idea of voodoo as being very tied to the history of Haiti, to the Haitian political project as an independent nation, to and it continues to be important to how Haiti thinks about it. And then the other way I approach it with particularly middle school students and up, which is maybe controversial, is I allow them to bring in the stereotypes and bring in some of the misrepresentations. So they'll bring something from popular culture, or they'll say, "What do you know about voodoo?" They'll talk about zombies or pins and dolls, or they'll like video games have lots of misrepresentations. And then we'll talk about where those come from. But what Natalie raised, which I thought was really important, is that sometimes when kids go home and say to their parents, "Oh, I talked about voodoo in school today," their parents have a visceral reaction to it that can be quite negative as well. So Natalie's suggestion, which I think is really important, is that there needs to be some preparatory work beforehand to introduce the topic to the parents so that they don't have that visceral reaction and that you in the classroom then get the backlash. Um, and I think in terms of where in the curriculum this happens, there's no place in the Ontario curriculum that specifically addresses Haitian identity, which I think is a bit of a problem. And there's no place in the Ontario curriculum that addresses Haitian voodoo either. But I think social sciences and I think languages. So I think there's lots of places in the curriculum where it could be introduced while still maintaining the Ontario curriculum as it's written.
How do we standardize this knowledge? So standardize in quotation marks so that it gets distributed to students evenly and is not recycled into misinformation and reduced to caricature. So how do we try to be mindful of that trap when we are thinking about integrating and sharing this knowledge?
I grew up here in Canada and I went through the Catholic school system and everything else. So I had my own belief systems and so forth. And there was a great course called World Religions, where basically the book on world religions had an expose on different belief systems: Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and so forth. One way, again, to represent who you are is to have an opportunity that in one of those books, if, in the case of Ifa Orisha, but also all of the the different traditions that have sort of come out of Ifa as well and Orisha over the millennium, that they have an opportunity to be represented in the proper way, in the same critical with the same critical analysis, comparative analysis, and visitation of the history, traditions, where it's practiced, and how many people practice the faith worldwide. I think a serious treatment of it, introducing it and really focusing on that within that context of teaching students in the K-12 in Canada about other belief systems, about, these are indigenous African knowledge systems that represent both a belief, spiritual belief system, but also religion in its own right, with all the main attributes and elements that should be studied with the same, respect and critical nature, and introduced in the same way you would Hinduism or Islam or any other belief.
I think that it is ongoing and it depends on your context. And it means that there are going to be shifts and changes. We're dealing with a new group of folks every time that we go into the classroom. It's a new experience. So I think a part of that is it's on us to keep on top of what materials are there. It's also on us, I think, to realize that we can't do it all ourselves, that we need to have support and partnerships, with other educators. To be involved sometimes as the people who are creating the materials in terms of the curriculum design itself, and also in terms of the very materials themselves. I'm talking about the text, the books, and all of that. And it is ongoing. That's also exciting, though, that it's ongoing, and we can use different kinds and different forms of media to do so. And I think the oral tradition is important and significant here so that people are not just talked at or, visioned at in terms of screens, that we have opportunities to also do deep and active listening.
How do we integrate African and Afro-Diasporic worldviews into education in a way that doesn't flatten them or turns them into symbolic decoration, but actually honors their depth and context? Yeah, we see so many aspects of culture turned into objects to be consommés, like things to be bought and enjoyed. And so how do we avoid that trap?
The only way to really not flatten it or dilute it or to misrepresent it is to represent it as it should be. In other words, how the practitioners practice it all over the world, its history, the richness and the culture and the art and the anecdotes of people over the centuries, and their experiences, the different phenomena that the practitioners have had to endure over millennia, and be able to disseminate that slowly.